Hi everyone, today I wanted to review a product that's been getting a lot of hype here on YouTube, and it's this foundation from The Ordinary. So this is the Coverage Foundation with SPF 15, and I ordered the shade 1.0N, which is very fair neutral. That was the palest neutral shade that they had. I've heard so many really good reviews for this foundation, I had to give it a go. I had to see if it was worth the hype. It's very affordable, I believe it's £5.90. So today is kind of going to be a first impression, and I'm really excited to try this. So without any further ado, let's chuck this on my face. I'm just going to pin my hair back and apply some of the L'Oreal Infallible Mattifying Primer before I get started. And I'm not going to use any colour correctors today because this foundation claims to be full coverage and I want to see how well it performs. The bottle looks really small, but it's actually exactly the same amount of foundation that you get in a lot of other brands. It's 30ml. There's no lid or anything, it's just this pump and you can kind of twist it to stop it from squeezing in your makeup bag, and then twist it again when you want to pump some out. So I'm just going to give it a shake first, that's what it says to do on the box. I'm just going to take a pump and see how I get on with that. The shade is a really good match. Believe it or not, I'm actually tanned at the moment because it's been so sunny in the UK recently. I know that I'm still very pale, but for me this is actually a little bit darker than my skin normally is. But it looks like I'll still be okay with this. This is a very pale shade. The formula is quite liquidy, it's quite nice to work with. It doesn't feel thick or heavy like a lot of full coverage foundations can. So I'm just going to put some on half of my face and see how it looks. For anyone who is new to my channel, I have dry skin with some hyperpigmentation just around my cheeks. Sometimes I can get acne as well due to having a hormone imbalance. I want to try and get as much coverage as possible, so I'm going to use this Real Techniques Expert Face Brush to really pack on the foundation. Usually this is quite good when I want to get as much coverage as possible from whatever I'm using. I like to really focus on the areas of pigmentation on my face, and then I just sort of blend it away at the edges. It's blending really easily, even though my skin is quite dry. I'm having no difficulty with this at all. I think the finish is very natural, it's very skin-like. It's not completely matte, but it's not overly dewy either. It's just a nice in-between. So as you can see, I have foundation on half of my face. I wouldn't call this full coverage at this point, but it has evened things out quite nicely. You can still see my freckles up here. I actually quite like my freckles, so I'm not too worried about that, but you can still see some spots over here, and you can see my redness coming through along my jawline as well. So if your skin is the same or worse than mine and you're hoping to get full coverage in one layer, this isn't it. Also, I don't know if you're going to be able to see this on camera, but it has started to oxidize on the back of my hand where I've put that pump as well. It's definitely not quite as pale. It's not too dark for me by any means, but it is oxidizing a bit. So it's going to be interesting to see how much it oxidizes during the day as well. Do you know what this really reminds me of actually? It's very, very similar to the Maybelline Dream Satin Foundation, which I've also reviewed on this channel. I'll leave the link to that video on the screen and in the description box below. But in terms of the formula, in terms of the shade, it's all very familiar, and I think it reminds me a lot of that foundation, just the way that it blends and the finish you get from it. So maybe if this foundation is a little bit difficult for you to get hold of, I would possibly try the Maybelline one, and at the same time, if you want to try the Maybelline one but maybe you can't use fragrances in your makeup, this one is fragrance free, so you might want to try this one instead. It definitely oxidizes a bit more than the Maybelline foundation though. I don't think the Maybelline one oxidizes at all. So when you bump it out onto the back of your hand, that's the shade that it's going to be on your face, and it will stay that shade throughout the day, whereas this one, it's definitely oxidized. It's oxidizing even more on the back of my hand now, and it's definitely oxidized on my face. I do feel like it's got a bit darker. I can get away with that at the moment because, like I said, I've actually got a little tiny bit of a tan. Even though I wear SPF every single day, I've somehow still got a bit darker. I don't know if I'll be able to get away with this when we get to the colder months later on. So this is one layer on my whole face and it looks nice. I mean, it's not caking on any of my dry patches or anything like that, but I'm not as blown away by it as I was expecting to be. You know, I've heard so many incredible reviews for this foundation I don't quite know what I was expecting, but I've got to be honest, I'm just not really blown away at this point. But just for the time being, I'm just going to try and build up a little bit more just where I need it. So I'm going to use a damp Real Techniques sponge to do that, and I'm just going to take the product and kind of bounce it just on the darker areas of my face. I just think it's funny that this is so similar to the Maybelline Dream Satin Foundation, but the Maybelline one claims to be a medium coverage and this one claims to be full coverage. Like, I'm building it up quite a bit to get more coverage, but I'm still going to need concealer, and I'm also going to put some on my neck as well, just because I am conscious that it is oxidizing a little bit. So I'm just going to take whatever product is left on the back of my hand and just kind of blend it down my neck. So I'm just going to get a bit closer now so that you can get a better look. I do think it looks a lot better on camera. I think my skin looks a lot more full coverage, and I think that my lighting is just helping to make it look a little bit lighter than it actually is in real life. But now I'm just going to finish the rest of my makeup and then I'll get back to you. So I've finished the rest of my makeup now, and I still have kind of mixed feelings about this foundation, and I know that I have not the best skin in the world. I know I have a lot of pigmentation and some very dark little spots and breakouts, and I know that that's quite a challenge for a lot of foundations, but I feel like if something says it's full coverage, then that shouldn't be an issue. It should just kind of cover it up. I felt when I put my under eye concealer on, I could kind of see how much lighter my under eyes were compared to the rest of my skin, just because this face has oxidized a little bit on me. So yeah, I'm not 100% sure how I feel about it at this moment in time. I'm definitely not as amazed by it as a lot of other people have been at the moment. So I'll come back later on before I take my makeup off this evening and just let you know how it's worn. And yeah, I will check in with you later. See you in a bit. Bye. Hey everyone, so it's been about 6 hours since I spoke to you this morning, and yes, I am wearing my nightgown because it's cold. So I'm definitely looking a little bit shiny, especially in my T-zone and around my chin area as well. So the reason I like to do these little check-ins at the end of the day before I take my makeup off is because sometimes my opinion of the foundation can change during the course of the day. So if it doesn't wear very well, or if it starts to oxidize a lot, then obviously that can really affect my experience and how I wear it. But in this case, I would say that my feelings on it are pretty much exactly the same as when I initially applied it this morning. I think the foundation is okay. It's probably worth trying if you're curious because it's not very expensive. However, a lot of people said that this was really amazing. There were a lot of big YouTubers who I love who were really hyping this up, and I think my expectations might have been a little bit too high when I went in to try this. The biggest problem I have is that it says that it's full coverage and it's not. When I think about it, a few of the people who reviewed this that I've seen, they actually had quite good skin anyway, so maybe the coverage wasn't as much of a big deal for them, but for me it's possibly the main thing that I look for in a foundation, is something that matches me and gives me the coverage that I need, and unfortunately this failed on both of those things. My second biggest problem is that it did definitely oxidize once it was on my skin. So yeah, that's kind of what I think about this foundation. It's okay, but it's not going to change your life. But I can see why a few people would like this because it's so easy to blend, because it sits so nicely on the skin. I'm not as into it, but remember, I'm not a makeup artist or anything like that. I am just a foundation hoarder who makes videos on the internet. So do bear that in mind. Take all the reviews you see with a pinch of salt. If you've tried this foundation and you absolutely love it, then let me know in the comments, because everyone is completely different. Just because I'm not overly excited about it doesn't mean that it won't be someone else's holy grail foundation. So let me know what you think of this foundation if you've tried it, and if you haven't, then let me know what you'd like to see me review next. Subscribe if you're new around here. I make a new video every Sunday at 9 AM. I also have a playlist of all the foundation reviews that I've done so far, so if you have pale skin like me, you might really find that helpful. I'm going to leave the link to that in the description box below, and I'll see you guys next week. Bye!